6 people laughed when Cara Medina walked into the HOA meeting room. The 7th, the only one who voted against demolishing her daughter's wheelchair ramp, looked at the floor. Cara sat down, set a laptop on the table, set a manila folder beside it. Didn't open either one. The chairman, a man named Garrett Daniels, who'd spent the last 2.5 years making Cara's life a specific and documented hell, leaned into his microphone and said, "Ma'am, this isn't your first time wasting our time. Let's keep this brief." Cara didn't respond. She folded her hands on the table and waited. She waited through the roll call, through the minutes approval, through the treasurer's update on the new landscaping contract. She waited through 45 minutes of procedural nothing while 6 board members avoided looking at her, and the 7th, a retired schoolteacher named Ellen Marsh, stared at the agenda like it contained instructions for surviving what was about to happen. Then Garrett called the vote. Motion to enforce removal of the non-compliant access structure at 414 Sycamore Lane. All in favor? 6 hands went up. Opposed? Ellen's hand, alone. Motion carries 6-1. Mrs. Medina, you have 30 days to remove the ramp, or the HOA will contract its removal and bill your account. Next item. Mr. Daniels? Cara's voice was quiet, not timid, calibrated. The voice of a person who's been planning this moment for 847 days and knows exactly how much volume it requires. I'd like to present something to the board before you move on. Mrs. Medina, the vote is complete. The vote is recorded. What I'm about to show you will determine whether it stands. Garrett looked at the other board members, the way a man looks at allies when he's not sure they'll hold. 5 faces looked back with varying degrees of irritation and confidence. Ellen looked at Cara. You have 2 minutes, Garrett said. I'll need 5. You have 2. Then I'll talk fast. Cara opened the laptop, turned the screen toward the board. But first, I should probably tell you what I do for a living. Now pause, because this is the moment the story pivots, and you need to understand what the board thought they were looking at versus what they were actually looking at. What they saw? A single mother, 37, small house, end of the street. A daughter, Lily, 7, who used a wheelchair because cerebral palsy had decided before she was born that her legs would work differently than other children's. A woman who drove a 10-year-old Honda and worked from home and kept her lawn neat and her head down and never, not once in 3 years, raised her voice at a board meeting. What they didn't see. Cara Medina, JD, specializing in disability rights litigation and ADA compliance. Licensed in 2 states, 7 years of practice. A client list that included 4 school districts, 2 county governments, and a hospital chain that had paid $2.3 million in settlements after Cara proved they'd systematically failed to provide wheelchair access to their rehabilitation wing. Cara didn't advertise. Her website was her name and a phone number. Her office was her kitchen table. She didn't need a corner office or a business card because the ADA didn't care where you worked. It cared what you knew. And Cara knew it the way surgeons know anatomy. Every clause, every precedent, every enforcement mechanism. She'd moved to Ridgewood Estates 3 years ago because the house was affordable and the neighborhood had sidewalks, and the listing agent had shown her the front entrance and said, "Easy to add a ramp here, gentle slope, straight shot to the sidewalk." She'd built the ramp 6 weeks after moving in, filed the permit with the county, got approval, hired a licensed contractor. The ramp met every specification: width, slope, handrails, surface material. It was textbook. Then the board changed. Quick favor. If you've ever been targeted by someone with a little power and a lot of pettiness, tap like and subscribe. Because Garrett Daniels didn't just want the ramp gone. He wanted Kara gone. And he had no idea that every letter, every fine, every inspection he'd sent for 847 days was being filed, cataloged, and prepared for the moment she was sitting in right now. Garrett Daniels had moved to Ridgewood Estates 4 years ago, 53, commercial real estate developer. He'd run for the HOA board because nobody else wanted the job. Within 6 months, he'd restructured the bylaws, tripled fines, and launched a beautification initiative, enforcing aesthetic uniformity that was, in practice, a tool for pressuring homeowners who didn't match his vision. Kara's ramp was his first target. The letter arrived 8 months after she'd built it. The access structure is not in compliance with architectural guidelines. Submit a modification request within 30 days or remove the structure. Kara pulled up the CC&Rs. Section 4.2 F. Disability accommodations are exempt, governed by federal fair housing laws. The board's own bylaws exempted her ramp, explicitly. She wrote a response citing Section 4.2 F, the Fair Housing Act, and the ADA. Attached the building permit, compliance certificate, and Lily's physician letter. The board ignored it, cited a different section, General Aesthetic Standards. Increased the fine to $200 per month. That was day one. Kara started documenting, not because she was angry, because she was a lawyer. Lawyers don't get angry. They get organized. She photographed every letter, recorded every phone call, Tennessee one-party consent, logged every interaction with dates, times, and exact quotes. And she started walking the neighborhood. Every Saturday, pushing Lily's wheelchair, photographing every board member's property. The violations were everywhere. Dave Keating, unpermitted shed, 3 years. Sandra Voss, fence exceeding height limit, 2 years. Tom Wexler, commercial vehicle in driveway, 4 years. Diane Cho, unapproved paint color. Rick Salazar, prohibited satellite dish. And Garrett Daniels, a hot tub on a deck extension built without county permit or HOA approval. 23 months. $11,500 in mandatory fines under the CC and RS he wrote himself. 6 board members, 47 violations, 0 enforcement. The rules existed for Kara. They didn't exist for the board. She didn't complain. She didn't argue. She waited. 847 days. Let Garrett escalate. Letters to inspections, inspections to hearings, hearings to the vote. Let them build the case against themselves. Because Kara wasn't fighting a ramp dispute. She was building a federal civil rights case. Tap like if you just realized that the quiet woman at the end of the street was the most dangerous person in the room. Because what Kara showed the board in the next 5 minutes ended 6 careers, funded a playground, and proved that the people who laugh the loudest are usually the ones who've read the least. "My name is Kara Medina," she said, the laptop screen facing the board. "I'm an ADA compliance attorney. I've been practicing for 7 years. My specialty is disability discrimination in housing, specifically cases where homeowner associations use architectural guidelines to circumvent the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act." The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. "For the past 847 days, I've documented every interaction between this board and my household. Every letter, every fine, every phone call. All recorded legally under Tennessee one-party consent law. Every meeting where my ramp was discussed. Every statement made by board members about my property, my daughter, and my compliance status." She clicked to the first slide. A timeline. 847 days, 43 letters, 12 formal inspections, $14,400 in accumulated fines, 1 vote to demolish. I've also documented every property in Ridgewood Estates owned by a current board member. She clicked to the next slide. 6 properties, 47 violations, 0 enforcement actions. Mr. Keating, your unpermitted shed has been in violation of Section 4.2 for 3 years. Ms. Voss, your fence exceeds the height limit by 8 inches, Section 3.7. Ms. Cho, your exterior paint was changed without approval, Section 4.1. Mr. Salazar, your satellite dish violates Section 5.7. She looked at Garrett. And Mr. Daniels, your hot tub sits on a deck extension built without county permit or HOA approval. 23 months of violation. Under the CC and Rs you wrote, that's a mandatory fine of $11,500. The room was so quiet, you could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. None of you has received a single enforcement letter. Not one fine. Not one inspection. The rules you used against my daughter's wheelchair ramp, the ramp that is explicitly exempted by your own bylaws under Section 4.2F, those rules don't exist for you. They only exist for me. She paused. The pause was deliberate. Kara knew, from 7 years of practice and 100 depositions, that silence after evidence was more powerful than anything she could say. Garrett leaned forward. Mrs. Medina, I'm not finished. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. What I've described so far is selective enforcement, which is a violation of the Fair Housing Act when applied to disability accommodations. It's also a violation of the ADA under Title II for any HOA that receives municipal benefits, and Ridgewood Estates receives a property tax abatement from the county, which qualifies. She clicked to the next slide. Legal citations. Case law. 6 precedents, each one a case where an HOA had been held liable for discriminating against a disabled resident through selective enforcement of architectural guidelines. The penalties under federal law include actual damages, punitive damages, attorney's fees, and injunctive relief. Based on the cases I've cited, the minimum exposure for this board, individually and collectively, is between $200,000 and $400,000. Dave Keating's face went gray. Sandra Voss put her hand over her mouth. Tom Wexler leaned back in his chair like he was trying to physically distance himself from the table. Garrett's jaw was working, but nothing was coming out. The machine behind his face, the one that had spent 847 days generating letters and fines and votes against a woman he'd assumed was powerless, was processing information it had never been designed to handle. I have a federal complaint drafted and ready to file, Kara said. I also have a complaint prepared for the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, and a third for the county attorney's office, based on Mr. Daniels's unpermitted deck construction, which is a building code violation independent of the HOA. She closed the laptop, folded her hands. But I didn't come here to file lawsuits. The room shifted again, this time with confusion. 6 people who had just been shown the legal equivalent of a firing squad were now being told the trigger wasn't being pulled. I came here because my daughter is 7 years old, and she uses a wheelchair, and there is not a single accessible playground within 4 miles of this neighborhood. Lily can't use the swings. She can't use the slides. She can't play the way other children play because every playground in this area was designed for children who can stand. Kara's voice changed. Not the lawyer's voice now. The mother's. I don't want your money. I don't want your apology. I don't want the satisfaction of watching you explain to a federal judge why you spent 2.5 years trying to demolish a wheelchair ramp while your own properties were riddled with violations you ignored. She looked at each of them, one by one, the way she'd looked at the neighborhood, carefully, thoroughly, missing nothing. I want one thing. You will fund a fully accessible playground in this neighborhood. A DA-compliant, wheelchair swings, sensory panels, rubberized surface, equipment that every child, standing or sitting, can use. The estimated cost is $180,000. You'll fund it from the HOA reserve, which currently holds $340,000. More than enough. She paused. And you will resign. All 6 of you. Tonight. A new board will be elected within 60 days, with at least 1 seat designated for a resident with a disability or a caregiver of a person with a disability. Or what? Garrett's voice was hoarse. Or I file Monday morning. Federal court, state commission, county attorney. All 3, simultaneously. And the 847 days of documentation become public record. Every letter you wrote, every fine you levied, every recorded phone call where you referred to my daughter's ramp as, what was the phrase? Kara opened the manila folder, pulled out a transcript. An eyesore that's killing our property values and attracting the wrong kind of residents. She set the transcript on the table. The wrong kind of residents, Mr. Daniels. That's what you called a 7-year-old in a wheelchair. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Someone's phone vibrated on the table. Nobody answered it. Garrett looked at the other board members. The 5 faces that had been his reliable votes. His coalition of aesthetic enforcement. His army of petty authority. Now looked at him the way crew members look at a captain who's steered them into a reef. Dave Keating spoke first.
I'll resign.
Sandra Voss. I'll resign. Tom Wexler, Diane Cho, Rick Salazar, one after another, the same 2 words, spoken with the particular tone of people who've just realized that the cost of holding a position is higher than the value of holding it. Garrett was alone. The chairman without a board. This is coercion, he said. This is a choice, Kara replied. The same kind of choice you gave me 30 days ago. Comply or face consequences. The difference is, my consequences are legal. Yours were just cruel. Garrett stared at the laptop, at the folder, at the transcript with his own words printed in black and white. At the 6 empty seats around a table where he'd spent 2.5 years believing he was building a better neighborhood and had actually been building the most well-documented ADA case in the state. Fine, he said. I resign. And the playground. The board can vote on. There is no board. You all just resigned. The playground will be approved by the interim committee, which, per the bylaws, consists of the HOA management company and the first 3 homeowners who volunteer. I've already spoken with the management company. They've agreed. You've already 847 days, Mr. Daniels. I've been ready for tonight since day 1. The only question was whether you'd give me enough rope. You gave me plenty. Kara stood, closed the laptop, picked up the folder. She walked to the door of the meeting room, opened it. Lily was in the hallway. Wheelchair, purple jacket, 7 years old, watching her mother with the wide, patient eyes of a child who didn't understand the details but understood the feeling. the feeling of her mother standing in a room full of people who'd been trying to take something away, and those people sitting very, very quietly. Kara crouched beside the wheelchair, eye level, the way she always talked to Lily, not down, not over, but to. "Baby, they're going to build you a playground." Lily's face broke into a smile. Not a small smile, the full, unguarded, nuclear-powered smile of a 7-year-old who'd just been told the world was about to include her. "With swings?" "With swings." "That I can use?" "That you can use." Lily threw her arms around her mother's neck. Kara held her. In the doorway of a meeting room where 6 people were sitting in the wreckage of their authority, a mother and daughter held each other, and the sound that filled the hallway wasn't applause or vindication or the click of a laptop closing on 847 days of evidence. It was a little girl laughing. The playground opened in April. The dedication plaque read, "Ridgewood Estates Accessible Playground, built for every child because every child deserves to play." Lily's name wasn't on the plaque. Neither was Kara's. They hadn't asked for recognition. They'd asked for swings. On the first Saturday after the opening, Kara pushed Lily's wheelchair across the rubberized surface to the accessible swing, the kind that holds a wheelchair, lifts it, and lets a child who can't stand feel what flying feels like. Lily swung. Higher. Higher. Her hair blew back. Her hands gripped the safety bar. Her laugh carried across the playground and into the street and through the open windows of houses where people who'd spent 2 years calling a ramp an eyesore were listening to the sound of a child playing for the first time in her own neighborhood. Ellen Marsh, the one board member who'd voted against demolishing the ramp, was sitting on a bench at the edge of the playground. She'd been the first volunteer for the interim committee. "She's really flying," Ellen said. "She's really flying," Kara agreed. Was it worth it? 847 days? Kara watched her daughter swing. Higher. Higher. The purple jacket catching wind, the laugh getting louder. Every single one.